This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Coffee Fuel Store. Coffee Fitness Unicorn. Coffee Fitness Unicorn. Hello. I'm Coffee Fitness Unicorn, your pocket DJ, and you're listening to Coffee Chats Podcast, a show where storytelling and coffee hang out. This week's special guest is horror author Paul Carro. Join us as we chat about apocalypse coffee, pineapple tamales, classic horror movies, and monsters. And don't forget, subscribe so you never miss a story. Thank you for listening and hanging out in my virtual coffee spot. Go forth and be magical. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, Michelle. Excited to be here.
This is so cool. You have no idea. I just before we started doing this, I kind of got like butterflies because you've got your book behind you, A Little Coffee Shop of Horrors, which
Yes.
is how we found you. So why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are? Well, I should say, I know who you are. Let the listeners know who you are, and let's talk about Little Coffee Shop of Horrors.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm Paul Carro. I'm a horror writer. I've been a writer, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later, but I actually got published for the first time in 5th grade, believe it or not. I'll get into more of that. Ties into Stephen King a little bit. But that is what I wanted to do pretty much my whole life. And I jumped after college to LA, where I got into film, video production, producing, screenplay writing, all of that for years and years. And none of that in the time I was in Hollywood, and I'm still here, was in the horror genre, though, which is what I grew up with and what I always wanted to do. So recently, I finally made the change that I said, enough's enough. It's time to get back to my literary roots. It's time to write in the genre I love. And honestly, I couldn't be happier with the direction things have been going. And just real quickly, the Little Coffee Shop of Horrors anthology, which for purposes of the podcast, we can call the anthology or the coffee anthology. It's a long title.
You got it.
But I'm really excited about this one because it is in conjunction with my nephew, who by circumstance shares the same last name. That doesn't always happen through marriage and such. But we are together, wanted to work on something for years, tried to do a movie together years ago, didn't come to fruition. We were in different places as authors. And he is an author in his own right, and not just a nepotism thing. And he's fantastic. And we finally found this project. And the concept is, I've always loved horror anthologies. I'm not as big a fan of themed anthologies because if you don't happen to like that theme, I'll still read it. I'll still love it because I love the authors, but I don't necessarily like, say, One of All Vampires. So we came up with this concept that we would go to different coffee shops around the country and let the coffee shop determine the story. So we didn't go in with stories in mind. We went in, and however long we had to be there, could have been days, could have been hours, could have been weeks, we would go back and back and back until the story hit, and we would try to write it front to back there if possible. COVID interrupted much of this process, but that's the concept. And what we found already from the first volume, and the second volume is almost done already, is we wrote things we never would have written otherwise. I really truly believe this. It's certain stories came up that aren't necessarily in my wheelhouse. And it's like, whoa, where'd this come from? And it came from that coffee shop. And so perfect podcast, by the way, for my first interview on this. So
that is so cool, because I literally have, how did this come about? And the name, of course, is great. And I love that you said, because that's exactly what I'm reading these stories, and I'm like, how did he come up with these ideas? Like, I don't like to give spoilers, but we definitely do have to talk about some of these stories. Just especially because, so like with the handoff, I didn't know where you were going to go with the handoff, because that's the first story. So it takes us into the book. And I was like, okay, Paul, where are we going? What's happening here? And without giving away anything, I literally was like, that was not what I expected at all. And so I won't give anything away, with the exception of, I'll just say like their names. So like you came up with, so we've got Cancer Face, Orange Face, and Snow Face. And I was dying of laughter. I'm laughing and I'm horrified at the same time. And I'm just thinking, how did he come up with this idea? Like I love that was my introduction to your book. And I was like, we have got to talk about this. Like, awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to say that's
where did that come from?
Right. Well, that's exactly one where I said I never would have written it. But I love it, and it's one that is dear to me. And it was the first one I actually did for this volume. And what happened was I was at, this particular one was at a Starbucks. I think it says in the books there.
Yeah.
And I had witnessed a couple coming in to hand off their child for custody weekend. And all I saw was the hatred between these two individuals. And thankfully, the child was, oblivious, it seemed, or maybe just ignoring it at this point. But it was seeing that handoff. I was like, okay, all right, this is the purpose of this anthology, is you let something that happens here dictate your story. And so that became the handoff immediately, the title and the idea. And then, of course, from there, I, in my fashion, take things in a totally different direction. And I happen to be a fan of aquatic horror. And this one definitely leans into the aquatic horror. And honestly, too, an homage, and there's going to be a second homage in the upcoming volume to Creature from the Black Lagoon, of course. You can't, go without saying that. And I've been lucky enough to see a screening of that here in LA and meet the daughter of the actress in the film. And was just, that had happened recently. So I think that was on my mind when all of this came together. And then from there, it just took off. And then from there, you had to have a way to be able to keep the monsters apart. And that's where the names kind of came in. So
that was brilliant. So I'm wearing my, the listeners can't see it, but so I'll stand up and show you. So I'm wearing my Nosferatu coffee.
Nice.
So that's actually one of my questions for you is, what is your favorite horror movie, and do you have a favorite horror monster?
I think first off, a great one that you're wearing. It's funny, Creature from the Black Lagoon was one for a weird, odd reason. I got into filmmaking also at a young age, and I started in the Super 8, like, many of the people, J.J. Abrams and people like that came through. It's like I did the same thing. I was making short horror films as a kid, and just got stuff from yard sales. I grew up poor, but the good thing is you could still, for like $2 get how to get a movie camera, but I did. Film was expensive, and that was tricky, but and basically there's an homage in the end of the book too, when you hear about this kid who's trying to get into the movies and stuff, and that was a little more based on home. We'll get into that. But basically, Creature from the Black Lagoon, I got a 20-minute reel of the movie at the same yard sale. So I bought all this 8mm equipment and had this silent fan. It was silent, so that I could go home and play it on the bed sheets. So I was really young and had that, and it just creeped me out. And I honestly had never seen the actual film until that recent screening I told you about.
Oh,
So
wow.
but I grew up with 20 minutes of it, like just So I'd say that probably is one of my greatest favorite creatures. But yeah,
That
yeah,
is
and the handoff takes that into consideration.
that is so cool. And that's what I was wondering, because it had that feel to it. So I was like, oh, he's going classic here. Like, we're going old school. That's going to lead into the next couple of questions.
Sure.
About coffee. So since it's Little Coffee Shop of Horrors, so like you said, the anthology, which of course is just a really cool concept. The fact that you guys went to these coffee shops and tried to do, like I said, the full story. So I'm really looking for. So now I'm looking forward to book 2. Super excited for that. So my favorite question to ask on the podcast is, how much coffee do you drink in a day, and what is your go-to coffee? Have you noticed how Coffee Fueled Stories doesn't have any ads? That's because I work tirelessly to keep this show alive. After 3 years on my own, I've decided I need to ask for your help. I've never asked anyone to subscribe. I've never asked anyone to leave a review. I've never asked anyone to rate the show. And I've never asked anyone to pay to listen. There are a few ways you can help support the show. I've created a Patreon page, Coffee Fueled Stories, and a subscription section on my podcast website. It's simple to support and help me keep my dream alive. Just click the link in the show notes to set up your paid subscription option. It's that easy. Thank you for your support.
Okay, so an obscene amount of coffee in a day. Yeah, I drink a lot, and I would say probably at least, because I do get up really, really early to write. So I would say I'd say at least 6 cups a day. And then at night, if I'm going to be writing late into the night, I switch over to decaf, so I can sleep at night. But my go-to is just straight up black cold brew coffee. No sugar, no milk, nothing. Just straight up. It's my favorite by far.
Nice. That's what I call apocalypse coffee, because
Nice.
you don't have to worry about, like, with me, I do like my cream and sugar. So should the apocalypse come, I'm kind of screwed. I'm gonna have to get used to. So you drink apocalypse coffee. So
Yeah.
power to you. That's awesome.
I'm stealing that term from you.
It's if you think about it, I don't know if you've watched the Walking Dead, but
Yes,
same thing. They're like, okay, we're going to drink coffee. And then one of the things that we did in the Air Force was, you don't have so when you're out in the field, you don't have a way to heat your coffee and do all of the things to make instant coffee. So they do give you instant coffee in the little packet. And so we did what's known as the field swig. So you literally dump the packet in your mouth.
Oh.
You pour the water in your mouth. You give it a nice little swig. So I've done that. That's
Thank
brutal.
you for your service.
I don't prefer that kind of coffee at all. So that's why I like the cream and sugar. But I do have respect for you with being able to drink the apocalypse coffee. That's definitely I should go in that direction, because I want to make sure that I'm prepared for the apocalypse. So every day I'm going to work towards that. How about that? So I was going to ask how you ended up from Maine to LA, and you kind of talked a little bit about that. So how long have you been LA? Would you consider yourself like Californian now?
Yeah, I've literally had recently exceeded just a little bit the amount of time. So I was born and raised in a little town called Windham, Maine. And, at 18, left for college in Amherst, Massachusetts. So went out of state and literally have never gone back. So I, of course, did summers a little bit. I came home. But I also traveled a lot. So the way it happened was really pretty bizarre. And when I say Stephen King opened so many doors for me, there's a tiny little thing that he did that became my doorway to getting to LA. And so when you wonder about how certain people influence you, it's shocking to understand the ripple effects that certain individuals can have. And he had in this case, what happened was he used to do this thing called dollar babies. And what he would do is let certain people make movies of his stories, and he would charge them only $1. And the only thing was you couldn't monetize it. It was, you could do film festivals and it could be your calling card and all of that. And Frank Darabont, a lot of great people came out of that dollar baby. So when I was in college and I went for communications, telecommunications, and film, I, for my senior thesis, decided to do a half-hour feature. Basically, what happened was I had found this story that I really, really loved and spoke to me in a Twilight Zone anthology. So speaking of anthologies, and so I reached out to the author, John Cohen, tracked him down somehow and brought up the dollar baby situation. And he said, go for it. So I did that, and I made the half-hour film for my senior thesis for college. Now, after that, I was dating someone at the time who was a year behind. So I graduated. I'm like, okay, I'm going to hang in town for another year and wait for this person to graduate. And so I'm working retail in the meantime, just trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I'm literally at my retail job, and I get a phone call, and someone says, "Is this Paul?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Paul Carro?" I'm like, "Yeah." Said, "Do you want to come to LA and run a video production company?" And I literally just said, "Yeah." And that was it. And I said, "Can I take a couple months off and hang with my friend who's about to graduate?" They said, "Yep." Okay. And we set a date a few months later. And that was it. They saw the senior thesis. So they saw the film out here somehow. It somehow got out here. And so this is more commercial oriented. I was doing music videos, doing sports videos, all of that. But it was it. I was basically running this production company. And I'd studied for that. So I was able to do that. But that was it. So just came out to LA not knowing anybody. I knew one person from my college that came out this way, but yeah, I knew nobody else, and just made the jump. And and eventually reached out to a good friend of mine that left college early, who was a good friend, and he came out and we started writing together simultaneously. So he was my writing partner for years. We kind of split up from that. Super great guy. He's writing for video games now. But that was it. That got me out to LA, and I've never looked back. Things just fell the right way in many, many different ways. Just ironically, all of it took me away from the horror genre, though. And
that's
so,
crazy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. Are there any, so did you have any involvement in like some of the music videos or anything like that, or were
I shot and edited everything. Yeah, the company was me at that point. Yeah, this was a financier. The music videos that weren't, for real big. There's so many bands in LA, so many musicians. So there's some great ones, and I've done some videos for some really, people would know the names behind the scenes more so, that really went on to big things in the music industry. One of the people that writes for most of Pink's songs with her. And he's fantastic. But it was all that kind of, I got to be on the red carpet at the Oscars a few years. So, being starstruck from back east, that was fun, but I got to go film that a few times.
How cool is that?
So yeah. That was great. Yeah.
Like, that is an amazing story. Like,
oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That is like, I'm blown away. Like, all I can think is, did you make, I know it took you away from the horror, but did you do, like, in my head, I'm like, did you do anything like with horror? Like, for example, Billy Idol went to Toby Hooper to have him do his music video. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, did you do anything not Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque,
Right.
but did
Right.
you do anything horror with these music videos or anything like that? So
Yeah, I wish I did. I really look at it as opportunity lost on that part. But no, I stayed pretty much into just try to stay on the cutting edge of like effects and everything at the time. So we kind of leaned into whatever was brewing in that world, you know.
that is
And nowadays,
amazing.
it's all way easier to do what I used to do back then. So. But yeah, that was it. And the writing, what happened, and just so people know, if you're trying to get into the film industry, and the writing part of it was, I did enter the Nichols Fellowship contest, which is one of the biggest screenwriting competitions out here, while I was in college, and someone had to talk me into doing it, and it costs money to enter. I think to send it in or whatever. And I was like, dudes, I'm poor, I can't do this. And they're like, no, you got to do it. And it was a script that was not it was a script that was a drama. It was a drama. It's totally different from even what I came to LA and started writing. But it was this drama, and it kept getting passed along within the competition. So it got really, really far along. And I didn't know how big a deal that was, because I'm from the East Coast, and I don't know that stuff out. I didn't know that was a calling card in itself. So
Wow.
thankfully, this other opportunity came up, because I didn't know I could have taken, getting to the top 10 or 15 or wherever I ended up in that competition, because I got really, really far on it. That I could have used that and tried to sell that script. And to me, it was just like, all right, well, that didn't work. And now I can appreciate, like, wow, that was actually a big deal, and I didn't realize it at the time. So,
That's great. Like, it's like,
yeah.
I'm blown away. I'm like, that is so cool. I had like, that's wow. Like, okay. I'm just like, in my head, I feel like this again, for me, I'm just associating like the whole Toby Hooper. I'm like, like Toby Hooper. This is so cool.
Right. Which, by the way, love the Funhouse was a huge one for me growing up. When you talk about just favorite movies and everything
Yeah.
too, and you're talking Toby Hooper, I don't think it's on as many people's radar, but he did a film called The Funhouse, and that one just really, really, really spoke to me. And that was that's honestly one of my favorite horror films. And I think it's, I'm going to be doing an article on my website called "You Had to Be There." And I think there are certain circumstances when you see certain things at certain ages, at certain times, it becomes a part of your DNA, because it means more to you. You talked about being in the service, and maybe as an example, and you would have to tell me, but the first movie you saw in a different place, the first movie you've seen at a certain age or a certain point in your life, I think those movies can really, really speak to you. And that happened to be one for me. I'm getting ready to go away to college. One thing about where I grew up in Maine, sorry, just a tangent real quick, but things were very bizarre, because we were in the country where you weren't really getting cable, because they weren't running the cable lines so far into the country. So you needed satellite. We didn't have the money for satellite. And so local TV was what we had. And we also had second run movie theaters. So where people are going to see the new movies every weekend, I'm seeing things from a decade or more ago, like,
Oh, wow.
and to me, it's new. I've never seen it. And,
Yeah.
and of course you had the video rental market really. I started to get to see everything that way, but it was ones like this where I go to a second run movie theater and see something for the first time. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I've been reading about certain things in Fangoria and stuff like that, and now I get to see it. But so you mentioned Toby Hooper, and I just thought of the Funhouse. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
Tangent.
I love it, because so what are your thoughts on especially since you I'm going to say that you are in the film industry, right? Is that
Yeah,
correct to say?
yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people there's like a love-hate with remakes or sequels, prequels, things of that nature. I'm pretty much open to interpretation. So I I do like my old school 80s and 70s classics, right? I mean, that's that's what I grew up. So that's what I know, just like you were saying.
Right.
However, we did just see the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it's very modern, and today they used a lot of everything was very fresh and today, and I mean it was over the top gore, and I was laughing and cracking up and screaming. I thought it was a great remake, and there have been several different remakes. So I don't know if you've seen that one or not, but what are your thoughts on all of these fresher versions? I'll use that term, fresher versions of some of our great classic horror films.
Well, I think whenever anyone gripes about remakes, and we do, honestly, I would say the majority opinion is, enough of the remakes. And my whole thought process is way different. My whole thing is you would not have David Cronenberg's The Fly. Okay. You would not have John Carpenter's The Thing. And by the way, The Thing was one I grew up with seeing because they played it every Sunday. So I love the original because I was a kid and I loved it. But don't get me wrong. Holy cow, John Carpenter's got to be one of, definitely top 10 for me.
Yes.
The Thing. So I look at it that way. I have disliked more remakes than I have liked, but I am like, if I got The Thing, and that's the only one I ever got in my lifetime for a remake, I'm okay with it. Keep making them, because there's going to be another Thing come along. And by the way, people despised The Thing back then. So when it first came out, right, and eventually it gained an audience. So some of these other remakes are probably going to gain an audience with time and distance also. So I think it's great. And I also think one other thing is some people will never see the originals. So why not have remakes? You get a new generation, let them experience it. And if they really dig it, they'll go back in time and find the original. I brought up on a post I did the other day online, like I've never seen the original Crazies. I saw the newer one with Timothy Oliphant, and that's the only version I've seen. And I want to see the original. I have the ability to, I just haven't. So my whole thing is I wouldn't have been exposed to that. I wouldn't have even thought of going back to see the original, which I will someday now, if I hadn't seen that remake. And I'm not saying I love the remake. I happen to think he's a great actor. He's one of my faves in certain things. But and I thought it was a really well done movie. But I can't even imagine what the original was. And I kind of want to go back in time and see it now because I've seen the remake. So
I see it, and I didn't even know that was a remake. I love that version. I don't know any other versions, so now that I know, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to go back and check these things out. And since we're kind of still on this line of thought, I wanted to ask you about American Horror Story. Or do you watch any of the American Horror Story series?
Believe it or not, I don't. I got involved, so I won't get much into the film stuff, but I have sold so many scripts and just have not been produced yet. So one thing about Hollywood, like I said, I would warn everyone to, forever, it's not even dog years. It's like whatever's bigger than dog years, that's how long a lot of things can take. And so I was a little tired of my stuff, supplying me a living, but not supplying me having an audience see it. And so I got into reality TV for a while. I was getting into more regular TV also, but I had an opportunity and I jumped in as a producer on this show on True TV called Operation Repo. So I did about 144 episodes with them, about 6 seasons. And that was like, I'm working on it on a Monday and a Wednesday night, it's on TV. It's airing. And so I was like, okay, that is what I was missing. So unfortunately, because of that, though, what I will say is I didn't watch as much TV after that because I got into it so much and it took so much time that certain things had to go. So believe it or not, I watch very little TV. My stuff really is getting out to the theater. I don't even stream that much. I get to a theater and catch up and binge what I can a little later. So I love what I've seen of American Horror Story, but I unfortunately have not happened to have seen it. Yeah, I haven't seen the season, believe it or not.
It's all good. I mostly just wanted to know if you've been to Murder House. If you've seen Murder House, Parts of what's really cool about Orange County and LA and Hollywood, right. And you talk a lot about Malibu in the anthology. You see, so what's really cool is, and this is the magic of TV, even though it says it's, you know, a city in Canada, those of us who know the place, we're like, that's Orange County. Like, I know. I'm like, I know. Yep. That's Catalina Island out in the back there. Like, exactly. But one of the coolest things was, so living in Orange County, you would see a lot of locations, you know, on film, and they would say same thing. It would, you know, be someplace else. Right. And so one of the coolest things was I never got to see Murder House, the actual Murder House. But in Asylum, I believe, season 2 of American Horror Story, the Orange County old courthouse, they use the outside and parts of the inside. And that I recognize. So, you know, it's kind of cool to like see something, you're like, hey,
yes,
that's, you know.
Yeah, that I love, by the way. And I love, so when you say that's, you know, what you were bringing up, that I love going to sets. I love going to exteriors. I love going to places where things have been filmed. And I think that's part of my love of Hollywood, is the experiencing it in a theater and experiencing it on the streets where it happened. For some reason, I'm just not in the front of the TV person, but I love, when you encounter something like that, and good to you for knowing where things are, knowing where things are filmed. That's a thrill. That is, and to this day, it's still a thrill. I've been on sets, and it's still a thrill for me to like see a place that I've, you know, seen on the screen. I love it. Yeah.
That is, I love that you say that, because I feel sometimes a little bit giddy, you know, when I see something or I recognize something. One of the, I didn't actually go on set, but my best friend lived in, so I grew up in a very small town, and occasionally they would film movies there. And I went to go drop her off one day from school, and there were just, you know, trailers and all kinds of, you know, movie production things in the streets. And we had no idea. We were just, you know, kids coming home from high school, and we're like, what the heck is going on? I'm like, I need to drop off my friend. Can I like get through the street? And they're like, not right now. Vanilla Ice is filming. And we're like, Vanilla Ice is here? Say what? So, you know, I mean, and we were like, well, can we watch like for a minute? They're like, yeah. You know, and it's really cool when they let you just stand outside. And especially, like I said, I was like, my friend. So of course we had to watch the movie, because we're like, that's my friend's house right there. So we're like, that one, we know, like we have familiarity with that location. But well, that's. I have.
Sorry, I was going to say,
no,
I
please.
have one fun one that I think you would love is so a friend of mine, you know, because of course being in LA, I would have people want to come out and visit from Maine, of course, just for the weather, if nothing else. And so this one friend, she came out. This is going back years. When you hear the movie, you'll understand it's a ways ago. But she came out and said, you know, Paul, I only want to see 2 things while I'm there. I want to see beaches, and I want to see movie stars. I says, well, I can guarantee the beach. I don't know about the other part. And, you know, I think I'd already sold a script or 2 at that point, but I really hadn't been on set or anything yet. So we go to this one beach, and as I'm going there in the distance, I see something out here we have called Hot Dog on a Stick. They might have had it in Orange County. And it's at a place called Zuma Beach, and they don't have one of those there. And I'm like, wait, that's new. What is that doing here? And so I said, let's go check that out real quick. You're going to love this lemonade. They have this special lemonade. It's like, you'll enjoy this. So we're walking over, approaching it, and suddenly we hear, excuse me. And I don't even know where that's coming from. We're looking around. They're like, yeah, excuse me, you're in the shot. And we're like, what? And we look around, and they said, yeah, just like a foot to your right. And so we move over to the right, and they're shooting the last Charlie's Angels movie. So, and it gets better. It gets way better. So literally we're in the shot, and now we're a foot away from the shot. So we're as close as you can be as they're shooting. But it's early morning, and it's right on the beach. And this fog rolled in, as it tends to do in that area of Malibu occasionally. And so they had to stop filming for a little bit. But they had all these sports cars, and Zuma Beach has a really massive, long driveway and parking areas. So Demi Moore was there. You know, she was in that film, and all the celebrities from the movie were there, and they just started jumping into the sports cars and just barreling up and down, the whole Zuma Beach area. But they were also just coming over, talking to us and everything. So she had a great time because she got to meet some pretty amazing celebrities, and she got the beach, and the sun came out later. That was a
how
thrill.
cool is that? So, have you been to Pink's? Speaking of hot dogs, have you been to Pink's hot dogs?
Absolutely been to Pink's, yes.
Right? Yeah. I've only been a couple times because it was kind of a far drive.
Right.
But Pink's is definitely you gotta love. There's certain, like you said, so even though I grew up in I grew up actually in Los Angeles County, but LA was still like an hour and a half drive away, and then of course with traffic it would be like a 2-hour drive. Right. And so us as teenagers, we spent a lot of time in Hollywood. Our favorite places to go were, Sunset Strip. So we went to the Whiskey A Go-Go, which is not the Whiskey A Go-Go now, but it was when I was there. And that's when we saw a lot of bands. I had a lot of friends in bands, so we were the groupies. I worked at a copy shop, so I made all of their flyers. I handed out all the flyers on Sunset Strip to everybody.
Awesome.
So I was the flyer girl. We also went to the Roxy, and I never made it to the Rainbow Room though, because I wasn't old enough to get into the Rainbow Room because we started going to Hollywood around 16, 17, 18. So we were pretty young. But yeah, same thing. Like we kind of had that. We were hoping to see like music. Obviously, at the time, Motley Crue was pretty big. Poison was big, so we were always hoping to see them going up and down Sunset Strip on their motorcycles. So, and so of course we had tourist destinations, even though I grew up there, we still had tourist destinations like Sunset Strip Tattoo, Pink's, and Melrose, Aardvarks, things like that. So awesome. Like I said, so sometimes you're still a tourist in your own area, I guess you could say.
Right. Yeah, no. And I love the Roxy, by the way. And I've been there many, many times.
That's a great club. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Great bands. Many great bands there. Do you have okay, so we know what your favorite genre of movie and writing is. Do you have a favorite genre of music?
No, it's funny. I think for music, I am kind of like a Jackson Pollock painting, kind of all over the place on that. I like almost everything. So I really don't settle on one thing. Except to say, I think the older music gets, the less attraction it has for me, just because it's been oversaturated. So I do like listening to fresh artists, new music. I would say if I go really to the old stuff, like one band I could continue to listen to because I just love the lead singer, Jeff Lynne, would be ELO.
Oh my God, I love ELO.
Oh yeah.
I grew up on those guys.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
nice. And if you, go ahead.
No, please.
Oh, just saying, if you see the, sometimes on YouTube videos now, you'll see them do flash mobs dancing, and they choose ELO a lot globally. So I love seeing those because it seems like even present day people like rediscover them. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask. So are you familiar with Traveling Wilburys?
Oh yes, yeah,
right,
yeah, for sure, yeah.
Oh my God, I mean that. Yeah. I love when, and especially, I think all of them are. I think we've lost all of the Traveling Wilburys at this point. Roy and Jeff and Tom. Yeah. But excellent musicians, excellent talent. I like your analogy about your music, saying that it's like Jackson Pollock. I use my analogy would be, I like anything from Mozart to Sex Pistols and everything in between. And it just kind of depends on your mood, what you're what you're into. Writing music is very different. Studying music is very different than obviously driving music. Because when you're driving, you want for me, I like it loud and I like it fast. But when you're writing, well, like, I don't know, I guess you could listen to it loud and fast when you're writing. It could change the mood. Right. So do you have writing music?
Yeah, writing music, I definitely do. because I'm always going to be on a laptop when I'm writing. I use, generally I'll use either Pandora, or I'll use YouTube, and that I'll do I don't actually do movie soundtracks because that distracts me because I know them too well and I know the movies too well that go with them. But I listen to epic music, I would say. So I can't listen to lyrics when I'm writing. So I can't have lyrics going, no matter how much I love music. So it's got to be just instrumental. But I love that really intense, epic music, video game music, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's what I'll listen to when I'm writing. I just a playlist like 2 hours, 4 hours. Sometimes I'll write to the length of the playlist. I'll say, okay, I'm going to do a 4-hour block, and I find a 4-hour playlist that I know when I'm done. So
that is amazing. I love that you say that, because I have John Williams Station.
Nice.
I will totally listen to that. Hans Zimmer. We were chit-chatting and having a good time talking about music and clubs and things. I wanted to ask you, have you ever been to Salem? So Joe had he mentioned about Salem in the anthology, but have you been to Salem?
Yes, I've actually been there several times. One thing about growing up in New England that's different than California is you can drive a very short way and be in another state. So I have been, and actually my new book will be dropping any day now. It's going to be out in about a week, and I'm not sure when this will be playing, but you can look for it very, very soon. And it's actually called The Salem Legacy. So it is my new horror novel, and it really is, I think a really, really scary, unique take on something that, to be honest, at this point is probably somewhat familiar to us. And so, yes, I have been there, and there is something about that place. And I think when it's built on a history where people just did horrible, horrible, horrible things to one another. And that's kind of what the book tries to get at, that I have coming out, is how could they, especially being so-called religious, puritanical people, do that to their neighbors? Once fear spreads, and I think, you can even relate that to present day, unfortunately, sometimes kindness and spirituality and all of that goes out the window. So the new book is dropping very soon. So that's a long way of answering that. Yes, I have been there and enjoy it very much. I mean, just beautiful place, but also just so weird to think what it was founded on,
Right. So you've been to the museum then, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Where they give you the history about what all of the things. And can I just say how cool that you tapped into kindness? Cause I literally have, from your story, one of your stories, I have written down, and I don't know if you can see it.
Nice.
Kindness is universal. And so when you put that in there, I wanted to highlight it, screenshot it, so thank you for saying that. Sure. And then also to tap into that same story, you talk about tamales. And yes. So, my favorite is pineapple, which you say is nice. Also your favorite. Well, the character's favorite is pineapple.
Right.
Is that your favorite, or did you just say that?
Yes, you just outed my pineapple fixation on tamales. Yes.
It was so funny because you didn't come right out and say the pineapple part first. You just talked about tamales and then a little bit more of the story. And then the first time because I was like, oh, well, he didn't say if it was chicken or pork or beef or what kind of or pineapple. And so of course I was like, well, my favorite is pineapple. And then when you said it later, several pages later, I was like, yes, that's awesome.
Nice.
So in that story, you also talk about surfing and speaking Spanish and visiting a monastery. So do you surf? Do you speak Spanish? And have you visited a monastery, or are you like your character and have not done any of those?
Okay, so I have done at least one of those. So yeah, I do not surf. I have tried it. And by the way, I love the ocean, love the water, so in there all the time. But the surfing just it was not. I'm very athletic and do a lot of sports. That was just one that I didn't take to enough to pursue it. And then the monastery, yes, it is my getaway. You mentioned Catalina earlier. You can see Catalina from the monastery. So it's literally on the top of that mountain. So that part is actually not fictional. And I actually write up there, if there was a coffee shop up there, which there's not, just a lot of monks and very beautiful views. I would certainly have written one of the stories up there, but it is gorgeous up there. And it makes me feel like I'm out of LA, even though I'm still in the heart of it, because I'm above it all. Yeah. And for some reason, the monks own the top of that mountain in Malibu. You can look down on, Steven Spielberg's, Tom Hanks's home, all of their homes and their pools and everything. And nope, right at the top of the mountain is this group of amazing people up there. So that was that one. And the surfing, the monastery, and what was
and speaking Spanish.
Oh, and speaking Spanish, yes and no. Believe it or not, growing up in Maine, we didn't have a big Spanish-speaking population, but it was a state law that you had to take Spanish. So every school taught it. And so I actually know my numbers, my colors, all of the stuff you learn in third grade to this day, because when you learn young, you know it. But fluency is not there. I've picked up a lot living in LA. But yeah, I wish I could say I did. But I'm working on it, getting better.
For sure. So last couple of questions. Sure. That being said, you write very early. You do a lot of early morning postings. Yes. So do you also do fitness that early, or do you try to incorporate fitness? Like, do you have like a set schedule, or do you kind of fluctuate with your schedule?
Well, I start the writing first. So for those that don't know, I do what's called 5 a.m. Writers Club, and so basically wake up at 5 o'clock and start writing. I love it because LA's asleep at that hour, and so even if I it was easier to go to coffee shops pre-COVID. A lot of them are opening a little later now, and that was part of the fun and part of what got me up. But what happens is by 10 o'clock, you've already got 5 hours in. And I typically can't stay on one project for that long. I mean, that's a long time. It's very productive, but then I need a change of pace. So that's where I would then break, get that breakfast in there somewhere between 9 or 10, eat healthy. And then I would try to get some exercise in around then if I'm feeling it. If not, I would go on round 2 of the writing, and then on the next break, get the fitness in. So the fitness part fluctuates, and it also depends on what I'm going to do for the day, whether it's something like hiking, whether it's running, whether it's walking. We're near the beach, so I can do a lot of really long walks, up to 20 miles, to be honest. Wow. And because I can dictate and I can do stuff along the way, and not the entire time, because I try to enjoy the journey. But the gym I have sadly not been back into yet, and I do miss going to a gym regularly. So I do have some weights at home and stuff, and I've started, using those again. So yeah, so just fit it in where I can, but I enjoy it. It's not that's not so much a task for me. I happen to enjoy, being active and physical. Just dealing with a knee issue right now that's been really problematic, and hoping that gets better. So I've signed up for a 5K in Malibu for November. So my goal is, no matter what's going on with this knee, by then I hope to be ready to jump right back into a 5K, or 10K, whatever I can do at that point. So yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking with you, like, so much, because I know we did a lot of DMing through Instagram for quite some time. Yes. So to actually be able to read your book and talk to you about the stories and the creatures and your path is just so cool. Like I said, I had no idea, and I really didn't want to do too much homework on you, because I really wanted you to surprise me, and you definitely did. I am like blown away by how cool this conversation was. And I wanted to let you know, so you were asking about your episode. So this episode, we're talking on Monday, will come out on Friday. So it will time out perfectly for the Salem Legacy. Is it Salem's Legacy or Salem?
The Salem Legacy.
The Salem Legacy. Yeah. Okay. I'm taking notes. So when you see me over here, I'm taking notes. So I have Dollar Babies, the Salem Legacy. Where can we go to learn more about Paul? And I apologize. I always say Paul Carro, but it's Paul Carro. So I
It's actually
apologize.
Carro.
Paul
That's
Carro.
okay, everyone.
Carro.
Yep. It's an odd spelling, an odd pronunciation, I should say, but yes, that's what it is. No, I would say the best thing is, for people that like, this book, because to me, anthologies mean so much to me. They're at the heart of what got me started. Oh, and if I can just quickly, this one last
Yes,
thing,
please.
running along, but so in the fifth grade, just to clarify on the thing I said I would clarify earlier, I had written, I'd always been writing from a young age and knew that's what I wanted to do. And clearly, I'm not ready to be an author in fifth grade, but I'd written a story for a class everyone had to write. And the teacher found something in that particular story that really spoke to her. So she submitted it to some sort of publication, unbeknownst to myself, and they accepted it for publication. So it was for a book of Maine authors, an anthology. So it was not horror themed, and my story was not even horror back then. But Stephen King was actually one of the writers, of course, because he's from Maine. And he came to my high school to read from his books occasionally before they came out. But so in fifth grade, that came out. Now, the problem was the book came out in hardcover and crazy expensive, like $40, $50, whatever. And we were too poor to afford that. So I got by on the luxury of having the acceptance letter for the publication. So my mom, is not around now. She kept that letter for years, and our library got a copy. So, if anyone's listening from back home that's connected with the Manchester Elementary School, I'd be really curious if it's still there, because the only thing was, it was really cool that I got to see my story in print, and I did see it. I got to touch it, feel it, see it, and then it went in the library. I never saw it again. And because they ordered a copy for the school. And but I'm wondering, what story did Stephen King have in there? I assume nothing has gone unpublished and nothing's gone missing, but I have to wonder, like, which story, because I can't imagine he would do a reprint for something like that. So I'm just really curious, and I'm sure there's no way anyone would have a book that obscure this many years later. I just can't imagine that. But so anyway, there was that. But as far as anthologies, I just love them, and I'm back into them, and it's important to me. So I'd love for people to check out the Little Coffee Shop of Horrors. But the cool thing is, if you go to my website at paulcarrohorror.com, and that's PAULCARRO, the word horror.com, you can sign up and get a free ebook. And in that ebook, I always do this where I'll post one story from the upcoming anthology. And then once we publish the anthology, we will take that story down and put one up for the newer version that'll be out. So there's one called The Big Guy. And I challenge people to guess which coffee shop I was at when I wrote that one, because it's actually possible to figure out by reading the story. But you can get a free ebook called The Three. So it's got 3 ghost stories, true ghost stories, and then it's got one story from the upcoming volume that comes out this fall.
That is totally awesome. Thank you so much. And again, I apologize for the technical issue that we have, but we recovered nicely. So thank you very much. Sure. And one last question about the house. Sure. We didn't talk about the house. Sure. I'm still reading it. And I didn't want to read too much, and I didn't want to try to cram too much into this one episode. Mm-hmm. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the house? Do you have a few minutes to share about the house? Okay.
Sure. So just real quick, the house was, when I knew I was going to get back into writing the books, like I said, I did the reality TV to finally have stuff produced quickly. So I says, okay, with books, I can still pursue getting them made into film at some point, but let me start putting books out there so people can see the stuff I'm writing. And so I originally started with the young adult superhero books. I'm a longtime comic book nerd as well as horror nerd. Yes. And I said, let me put that one out first, because I got younger nephews and nieces, not as, old, not that he's old, but the one that I wrote this book with. And so I put that one out first, because I was like, let me get my movie stuff out of my head, so I can start doing it properly. So I consider the house my debut novel, even though I had one snuck in before that. And it's essentially, the concept is the book opens on these kids playing in a field, in this giant field. There's lots of undeveloped spaces in Maine. It does take place in a place called Teller Falls, Maine. And suddenly they're in the middle of the field having their fun and playing. And suddenly the sky goes dark and they're like, what's happening here? And they turn around, and where it was just an empty field moments earlier, there's now this massive, massive, massive home. We're not talking a 2-story home. This is an estate. This is a very, very large thing. And it just appeared in the middle of this field. And then throughout the town, one by one, these doors mysteriously open where there shouldn't be doors in other people's homes. And next thing you know, they find themselves looking out into that same field, and they can't seem to get out of this house. Kind of the tagline, that it uses, 9 strangers and 9 secrets so dark. They're hoping to take the secrets to their graves, and one house is willing to accommodate them all. So it's so pretty fun thrill ride. I was really excited, as the horror fan. There's a thing called Comic Book Resources. They're a really big media, company. And they recently came out with a list of their top 10 horror novels. And bam, smack in the middle at number 5, they put The House. And I got to tell you, just the thrill on that is, I don't think I could win an Oscar or something that would mean more to me. It's like, it's Comic Book Resources, and I love comic books, and I love their little, I love their company. But to see the names on that list, of course, Stephen King, but Neil Gaiman, Bird Box is on there, and, it's all subjective, and there's different top 10 lists that I'm nowhere near. But to be on that one, says I was heading in the right direction with The House, and I'm really proud of it. So, yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. I love how you started like some of the and I don't want to get into the spoilers, but the scene with the sign is like just freaking awesome. Like that's all I'm going to say. And like I said, I'm still reading it. I'm chewing on that one. I'm savoring that one, if you will. As opposed to, like I said, I devoured the anthology. So The House, I'm chewing on it, and I'm really taking that one in. So I'll be sending you messages about that one. And oh my God. Awesome. Oh my God. So we'll have to talk again.
Yes.
When we can talk again about after I finish The House, and then the Salem Legacy. And I'm actually looking forward to the big guy. I actually did sign up. Awesome. So I'll need to go tap into those stories. And I'm curious to know which coffee shop you are at. So
right.
I'm gonna play the game. I'm gonna see if I can figure it out.
Awesome. See if you can. Yeah, it's
yes.
I think this one's I think someone will figure it out. Yes, I think someone will.
Very cool. Well, Paul, thank you so much for your time. I really, really, really appreciate it. And I'm, like I said, I'm so glad that we finally got a chance to actually talk, not in person, but in person enough. So thank you. I would love if you would say my tagline, go forth and be magical, and send us off if you have that opportunity.
Sure. And you have the great voice, by the way. I'm a huge fan. Thank you. I wish everyone out there in Horrorland and Podcast Land to go forth and be magical.